Let's do some more work with the pen tool. In the zip folder that I've attached in Canvas, there are some files. So I'm going to open up the Beach Shapes Illustrator file. And there we have several kinds of beach shapes. And if I open up my Layers panel, you can see that the shapes are on a layer that is locked. And there's a layer above it to draw on. So make sure you're on the practice layer to draw that. We've got an umbrella, a shell, a truck, a palm tree, a sailboat, and some waves. So let's just practice a little bit drawing these shapes with the pen tool. I'll zoom in on the umbrella, and I want to make sure that I have no fill from my pen tool and just a black one-point stroke. So no fill and a black stroke. I'll get my pen tool and I'll draw the handle of the umbrella there, the pole. That's pretty easy to draw. Just straight lines. So I'll just click, 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 click. And when I hover my cursor over that first point and see the circle by the cursor, that means I'm closing the path, and I can click that. So that's now a closed path. Now I'll draw the top of the umbrella, and the point with using the pen tool is to use as few anchor points as possible. And I can draw the top of that umbrella with just 2 anchor points. So I click, hold, and drag out, and click, hold, and drag back. Now here I want to change direction, so I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key, and notice how my cursor changes. That means I'm changing the direction of the curve. I release the Alt Option key, draw the curve, then I press the Alt Option key again. Notice the change in the cursor. Again, Alt Option to change the direction of the curve, and then click when I see that circle to close the path. Now, I'm not usually very careful about drawing these kinds of curves. I can't usually draw them perfectly the first time. So I'm going to use my direct selection tool to select the path and to bring up the control handle so that I now can kind of finesse my curve and make them closer to the template there. And I can do that on all of these curves. Just click with my direct selection tool and use the control handles to get the curve exactly where I want it to be. So that looks pretty good. Let's work on the shell. And the shell is going to be very similar to the umbrella. I'll get my pen tool, and you can see that I got basically straight lines along part of the shell and then scallops, just like the umbrella. So I'll start here and just click once, and then click here to create a straight line. Again, I'll press Alt or Option to change the direction of the curve. Notice the change in my cursor. I'll release the Alt Option key to complete the curve, and again, Alt Option to change the direction, release Alt Option, click and drag to complete the curve, Alt Option to change the direction of the curve, and so on. It's kind of like a finger dance to have your finger right there on the Alt or Option key to keep changing the direction of the curve. So now I'll Alt Option to change the direction, and all I need to do is draw a straight line. And this little area down here is a little kind of complicated, but again, it's just a combination of using the Alt or Option key to change direction of the curve, and then manipulating the curve later with the direct selection tool and the control handles. So again, I'll get my direct selection tool and just kind of finesse some of those curves that aren't exactly aligned with the template. And that's pretty easy. Let's see, the truck and the palm tree, those are pretty straightforward shapes. Why don't you try those on your own? They're mostly just straight lines. I'll work on the waves. Those can be a little bit tricky, but again, it's just a combination of changing the direction of the curve, click, hold, and drag, click, hold, and drag, Alt-Option to change the direction of the curve, and then drag down towards the direction of the curve, release the Alt-Option key, and so on. So it's just a combination of using the Alt or Option key to change the direction of the curve. And it's kind of a rhythm, I guess you could say, when you get used to using the pen tool and then using the Alt or Option key to change the direction. I'll press V to deselect the pen tool. And again, my curves don't exactly match the template or aren't maybe exactly where I want them, so I'll use the Direct Selection tool to finesse the curves exactly where I want them. And that's important to understand. I never seem to draw the curves exactly the way I want them the first time, so I always need to go back and finesse those curves. So I'll work on the sailboat. Again, I think you've probably gotten the idea now. These are just straight lines, so I'll click and click. Alt-Option to change the direction of the curve, drag out, and then close the curve at the top. My curve isn't exactly aligned with the template, so I'll use my Direct Selection tool and use the Control handle to get my curve exactly where I want it. I'll do the other sail there. This one's a little bit trickier because of the curve here, but again, it's the same technique, using Alt-Option to change the direction of the curve, and then Alt-Option to change the direction of the curve again, click, hold, and drag, and then close the path. And then use my Direct Selection tool to work with the control handles to get my curves exactly where I want them. So there are some shapes. You can work on those on your own, but I wanted to show you too what some other students have done with this. They make compositions out of these, and I'd like you to try this on your own. It's just for your own amusement, I guess. But students have done some very clever things with these shapes, making compositions out of them. This first one here on the upper left-hand corner is just a typical beach scene. There's a sandy beach area with the umbrella there, the palm trees of various sizes, the boat on the water with the little waves up there, the sun setting amidst the clouds. The one in the middle here is very interesting. It's kind of a dark, disturbing composition, you might say. There's the sailboat on a sea that is blue and black, looking very menacing. But look what they've done. They've taken the top of the umbrella and made it sort of the snow-capped top of mountains. Kind of a clever thing to do with that umbrella. And then again, look at what they've done with the trucks. They've turned them into a building, a kind of a church, I guess, because there's a cross up there. That's a very clever way to use these shapes, creating an interesting composition there. Here's one on the right, a cityscape. The usual things, there's a sailboat, but look what they've done with the sail. They've created a suspension bridge here with the sail shape, and then the top of the umbrella are sort of the moorings that hold it in place there. I don't know if you can see that so well. They drawn some buildings and used the trucks as part of the buildings there. So again, a very clever kind of composition there. Here's another very interesting composition. They've used the waves to create this border around it, creating this kind of very interesting repeating pattern with the shell, kind of a sunset. Interesting concept here with the clouds, the different outline contour colors. And then the one on the right is also very interesting, this monochromatic kind of drawing with the shapes. But some very interesting ideas with those. So you might try those on your own and see what you come up with. And anyway, there's a little bit more about using the pen tool.